Tonight, you'll hear 15 real stories from Reddit. A gas station worker gets a chilling warning from a man who once slept through a robbery, the one night that saved his life. And a family finds their missing maid buried behind their beach house. Guys, these are just two of the stories I've narrated. There are many more waiting for you with full versions on my channel. Let's start with the first story. I'd really appreciate a like and a subscribe.
Something weird happened to me, more scary in a what could have been kind of way, so not on the same scale as the poor people in the comments. I was 17 years old, male, and walking home from a night out quite drunk and stoned about 2 a.m. I'm in a lonely part of my walk. No people, few cars, just a road and some large shops, a B&Q and a car picture room, out-of-town shopping complexes that have since become ubiquitous in the UK. Anyway, in a lay-by about 15 feet away is a silver car, pulled up, lights on. As I stumbled past, two men step out and call me over. Something about the situation immediately sobers me up. I keep walking, and one of them shouts, "It's fine! We are the police! We will drive you home!" I stop for a moment and reply with some smart-ass comment along the lines of how police would never do this and that they were dodgy. Calling them dodgy always sticks in my mind. He insists I'm too drunk and it's not safe for a young man like me, and I should let them take me home. I say no, and he then tells me to come over here and listen to the police radio in the car to prove they're real police. It's weird. The guy is almost begging me, desperation in his voice. I repeat it from no, tell them I'm fine, and keep walking. Minute I'm out of sight, I run as fast as I can and don't relax until the 30 minutes later I'm home. I can only assume they didn't manhandle me into the car because there was the very occasional taxi driving past. I'm 45 now, and occasionally think about how that could have ended for me. None of the scenarios seem good. Sadly, stories like this are probably more routine for women, but at the time it really shook me up. My take on the story. Sometimes survival comes down to simply trusting your instincts. Let's move on to the next story.
Every orphan source report from the IAEA is terrifying and well documented with pictures. One of the most horrifying is the Guyana accident in 1987. For those who don't know, an orphan source accident is when radioactive material that had been lost, usually from an abandoned hospital, is discovered by people unaware of the danger, who inadvertently expose themselves and others to lethal and/or permanently disfiguring doses of radiation. You read in horror as survivors describe people inviting their neighbors to see the oddity they found and share samples. Children playing with the sparkly dust, all unaware that they have just doomed themselves.
Acute radiation exposure is a truly nightmarish way to die. Your flesh rots away over months, while skin grafts are ineffective. You deteriorate in pain in the hospital until you die of infection or necrosis. It's not just a tragedy, it's a warning about ignorance and the unseen dangers around us. Let's continue.
My uncle was in a bar one night and started talking to this random guy. He described him as a really nice guy. He met him a few other times in the same bar. They drank and talked about random stuff. Soon after, my uncle stopped seeing the guy at the bar. IDK how long after, but my uncle got notified that he had jury duty. He showed up and found out what it was for. A serial killer, and the killer was his friend from the bar. Derek Todd Lee. My uncle was promptly dismissed from jury duty for obvious reasons. It's terrifying how evil can wear such a friendly face. Let's continue.
I work midnight shift at a gas station, and I have for quite a while, at various stations in different areas with varying levels of criminal activity. I have regulars, of course. I'm a small-statured woman, as is my partner the other half of the week, and we've always been partners. So these regulars often worry about us and keep watch on creepy occurrences when they can. I had one man who worked in the metro an hour away who would stop in every morning for his cigarettes. He never smiled or seemed friendly, and as I often do, I tried to think of what I could do that might make him smile one day. It took many months, but I finally pulled it off by having his cigarettes ready on the counter and already scanned for him to pay for as he walked in. He smiled and then asked me, "Do you ever get scared on the night shift? You small girl is not safe." I said I sometimes did, but we could lock the doors and hide if we had to, and that the provincial police, think state troopers if you're American, had a station close by and came in often to get their highway vehicles washed. I had a good rapport with those police. He nodded and then told me a story about when he first moved to our country from Eastern Europe with his wife and child back in the late 80s, early 90s. He fell asleep at work one night at the gas station he worked midnights at. When he woke up, the phone had been ringing for hours, and his manager was shaking him violently, asking if he was all right. He was fine, he said. What was the problem? He was sorry he fell asleep. His manager screamed that it was fine he fell asleep, to look outside. All of their motor oil was missing, and the outside of the place was a mess. The thieves had come and swiped all the oil and left him be because he slept through the entire thing, and then moved down the road to the next station for an encore. At that station, the clerk was awake and fought back, so the thieves stabbed him to death and left him to bleed out. When he finished telling me this, he concluded with, If you ever feel sleepy, just lock the door and do it. It might save your life. I don't work at that station anymore, but I think about that guy all the time and wonder how his grandkids are.
One of my friend's family, growing up, had a beach house, and I'd get invited every now and then. They had money, and the house was massive. Pretty cool place, too. They even had a full-time maid who had her own flat at the back. One day they go there for a long weekend, and when they opened the door, the place had been ransacked. It was all a mess. Missing TVs, furniture, broken stuff. You'll get the picture. They went to check on the maid, and her flat was empty. All her belongings were gone. They called the cops, who came over and had a brief look, not interested from what they said, and left saying the maid probably had something to do with it. And that's what everyone believed for a week. Until the dad returned the following weekend to try and change the locks and etc. And he brought their dogs along with him. Yep, you know it. One of the dogs started digging and found the maid buried in the backyard under a top they had close to the pool. So the theory now is that whoever came in probably knew her, and she recognized them, and she had to go. In the 1990s, a nurse in New Jersey killed hundreds of hospital patients. Sometimes he would sneak into patients' rooms at night and inject them with fatal medication doses. Other times, he would put the medication into IV bags in the supply room, so they would chill whatever random patient they were given to later. He was accused several times. Some patients pointed him out before they died. Some staff thought he was creepy and dangerous and refused to work with him. He kept getting fired from hospitals. But the hospital managers knew that if he got arrested, they would be sued by the families of the patients he murdered. So they just fired him and didn't call the police. That happened at 12 different hospitals over the course of 16 years. Investigators believe he killed as many as 400 people. After he was arrested, he confessed to 40 murders. In 29 of them, he gave enough detail to be charged and plead guilty. He is linked to 300-plus deaths more than that. But details of those will probably never be known because so much information was lost over time or destroyed by the hospitals. It's horrifying how fear of reputation can cost hundreds of lives. Silence can be deadlier than any weapon. Let's continue. When I was 17, I was hanging out with two friends, and they wanted to go smoke weed in the woods. I didn't feel like it, so I drove them and waited in the car. After a while, I was getting bored and decided to go meet them, but there were 4 paths going off in different directions, so I just took the biggest one. After walking for a few minutes in the pitch-black forest before flashlights on phones, I come across this dip in the trail, and on the other side is a bench, lightly visible due to the moonlight. On the bench is sitting a man, and another one is standing in front of him, but I can only make out silhouettes. Being sure these are my friends, I yell out to them before walking over. If you ever walk the woods at night, it's just an uneasy feeling all around, so I was cautious to begin with.
Well, it turns out, just after yelling out to my friends, both silhouettes turn around towards me. Not a word, not a sound. The guy sitting down starts sprinting full fucking speed towards me in complete silence. I got the absolute fuck out of there, sprinting also the other way, and tripping over shit because I couldn't see anything. I finally get out and lock myself in my car, but I was really worried for my friend. Maybe a minute later, I see them both coming out of a completely different path. They also confirmed they never saw me or anyone else. My heart still sinks just thinking about that dude sprinting in silence. What the fuck was that shit? That kind of terror burns into your memory. A split second when curiosity nearly turns into a nightmare. Let's continue.
My college girlfriend called me one night. The Baton Rouge serial killer had been active a while, and she was being followed all over town, and even after going in circles, by a wild truck, which the killer supposedly drove. She fit the victim profile. She was brunette, living in, house-sitting for her aunt, a wealthy neighborhood. My roommate and I drove over, and we filed in line behind her and the truck. She lived essentially on the LSU grounds, so I assumed it was a stupid student prank or something. She parks at her aunt's house. Truck stops one house short of her aunt's, and we pull in behind her. I explain I'm going to go defuse the situation. Walk over to the truck. The FBI says the killer is a white guy. This man's African American. Explain no one is upset, but he's freaking out my girlfriend. He needs to leave. He looks side-eyed at me and drives off. I see the guy again a few months later on the cover of the Baton Rouge paper. He's been arrested. He was the killer. It's chilling how close someone can come to death without even realizing it. One decision away from becoming another headline. Let's go to the next story.
Well, it's my story. When I was a little kid, 5, 6, we had this neighbor, like grandma to me. I'd go over and have snacks, and she had a Mr. Potato Head I played with that was her now adult son's toy. Weird core memories. He came home in his 20s from the army, I think. I don't remember much about him, but he asked about taking my older brothers camping, but my mom said no. She had a weird feeling about him. Side note, we lived out in the country, not even a town, just a place. There were no locked doors. Everyone trusted each other. My mom saw him at our little store with bee stings all over and was concerned. He said he got them at the creek. She thought that was weird because that's just not a thing where we went all the time. But okay. A little while later, not sure how long, the news said there was a murder of some campers out past where we lived. No leads. People were shocked. This doesn't happen here. My mom remembered her weird feeling and the bee stings that didn't make sense. She called the police to say, hey, probably nothing, but here's what I got.
I remember detectives coming to our house to talk to her. They had some other evidence that matched, but not enough to link him to the murder. A couple with their child. It's unsolved to this day, though the detective said he knew it was him. A few years later, the guy went to prison for an abduction, attempted murder, of a woman who ran out of gas, and he offered her a ride. She lived, thank God. It's unsettling how instincts and small details can be the only thing keeping someone safe from a predator. Let's continue. My high school GF called late one night after I was home and in bed. She said that something had happened and asked if I could come over. She was clearly shaken and not full of details. So I told my parents and drove over towards her house. At the top of her subdivision, I was met by a cop with lights on. He asked where I was going, and I told him about the call from my GF. He lets me go by, and I come over the hill to the cul-de-sac where she lives, and I see multiple cop cars around the circle. They watch me pull up and get out of my car. My GF comes running out of her house and meets me in the street. She explains that someone had broken into her neighbor's house and started beating her with something heavy. The neighbor managed to get out of the house and headed to my GF's house, where she started banging furiously on the front door. My GF's dad was out of town, so her mom answered the door, and the neighbor just fell into the foyer, bleeding profusely from the head. Her mom looks up to see the attacker headed up the walkway towards the front door. She pulls the neighbor into the house and closes the door, hitting the attacker with it before it fully closed. He then took the heavy tool he'd used to beat the neighbor and smashed the little window at the top of the door. Her mom started screaming, and the attacker just turned around and walked up the street into the darkness. I spent the night there that night, along with 2 or 3 cops outside in their cars, and in the morning we could see blood still pooled on the floor in the foyer and splattered blood above the front door from where the attacker had swung bloody tool and smashed the window. No one was ever caught or even identified. It was just completely random. The neighbor survived, and to my knowledge had no permanent physical injuries beyond scarring from having her scalp stapled shut. She moved away shortly after the incident. TLDR, GF's neighbor was brutally attacked in her home. She ran to my GF's house, and the attacker fled after nearly getting into their house too. No one was ever caught. It's terrifying how random violence and strike so close to home, leaving scars that last a lifetime. Let's continue. I was around 10 years old. I was at school, but my mum told me she was thinking of taking me to the doctor's in the afternoon. Recurring eye issue. Lunchtime, and I'm in the dining hall when the office woman told me there was a taxi outside for me and I needed to go. I assumed my mum booked it for me as she can't drive. I cleared up my stuff and got my bag. Just about to leave when I remembered my jacket in my classroom. I rushed to get and head out for the taxi. Office woman tells me I'm too late and the taxi had gone without me. I just went back to class with panicking my mum would be angry at me. School finishes and my mum is waiting for me at the gates. I burst into tears apologizing for missing the taxi and thinking I was in big trouble. She never ordered the taxi and had no clue what I was talking about. She ended up not making the doctor appointment, nor never found out who ordered the taxi or who the driver was. My man doesn't like to think what would have happened if I hadn't forgotten my jacket and got in that taxi. TLDR,
Missed the taxi I thought my mum booked for me, only to find out it could have been attempted kidnapping. It's a chilling reminder of how close danger can come without warning. One small moment can change everything. Let's continue.
When I was learning to drive, my instructor advised me to always lock my car doors as soon as I get into my car. I asked her why, and she told me her personal experience. This happened almost a year after she passed her test. She finished work about 3 a.m. She'd just gotten into her car and gotten her keys in the ignition when 3 guys jumped into her car. She had a knife to her neck and was told to drive. They give her directions to an alleyway. They dragged her out of the car and raped her. After they were done with her, they left her in the alleyway and stole her car and purse. It took her a while to get help. Police did find her car a few days later, abandoned and on fire, on the outskirts of the city. But the guys were not caught. The reason she started to teach driving was her way to protect other women and make sure no one else goes through what she went through. So she advised all her female students to lock their car doors as soon as they get in. Edit to add. Wow, I wasn't expecting this karma to go this big. I'm still in contact with my instructor via social media. I sent her screenshots of this comment and the other comments. She is happy that her advice or warning is out there before she retires for health reasons. She wants me clear a misunderstanding that she saw in the comments. She does give the same advice to her male students, and she does tell them her experience, but leave out the rape part. She does get messages from her past students, including me, saying thank you for the advice or warning, and we tell her about her close calls. A message of hers. Thank you for sharing your experience and advice so that others can be saved and they don't go through the same experience. It's a powerful example of turning personal trauma into a lesson that can save lives. Let's continue.
My aunt fell asleep on her couch one night, and my uncle was asleep upstairs. She woke up around 12 a.m. to a random man staring at her while she slept. He said the guy upstairs was sound asleep, meaning he came in, saw my aunt on the couch, looked around, saw my uncle asleep upstairs, and then sat there and watched. She told him to leave, and somehow by the will of God, he left. He slid in through the back door. We live in a relatively safe area. Craziest shit I have ever heard.
World War II. The Pacific Theater. My great-uncle on my mother's side fought at Okinawa. While taking cover behind a rock, he was shot through the foot by a Japanese sniper and evacuated to a hospital for recovery. He was the only member of his platoon to make it off the island alive. It's haunting to think how a single bullet, one moment, can decide who lives and who doesn't. Let's continue. My grandfather's village was razed by the Nazis. He had 9 siblings. The Nazis came to the village in retribution due to guerrilla attacks, and they believed the guerrillas were hiding there. Most young men fled before they arrived. The men that were in the village were lined up against a wall and shot. My grandfather's mother put half her children, the youngest, in the cellar, and she took the other half with her, because the Nazis were rounding up the entire village and locked them inside the church. The reason she had split her children was because she feared they would all be killed, so she wanted at least some of them to survive. The Nazis ransacked and burned nearly every house in the village, including my grandfather's. He was in the cellar with his siblings, and their house burned above them, but they were saved. Those in the church also survived, but many didn't. After this, the Nazis would come again sometime after, and pretty much force all the young men and boys, including my grandfather, to help make roads and fortifications for them. Despite it all, they all survived the war, though many in the family didn't. It's a haunting reminder of the unimaginable choices people had to make to protect their loved ones during the horrors of war. Let's continue.
So, what did you think of these stories? Should I keep making videos like this? Drop a like and subscribe. Your support means a lot. I'm looking forward to reading your thoughts in the comments.